Why do you love the hodl wave?
The hodl wave is the history of Bitcoin and its decentralization over time. So it's a very complicated chart. There's a lot going on. But what's amazing about it is you get to see exactly how people have been behaving with their Bitcoin on the base layer. So what we're looking at is the black line is the US dollar price. All of those colored lines are different age bands of Bitcoin that have been living in Bitcoin addresses. So all Bitcoin live in addresses tracked by the blockchain, which is a database of all the transactions.
Do we know which ones are lost here?
We can speculate. The ones in the upper right-hand corner, the purple and blue ones, are very likely lost because those Bitcoin have been sitting at addresses for longer than 10 years. That's the purple band.
Right.
The blue band is 7 to 10 years. And so it's very likely that a majority of those are lost. And that kind of correlates with what people believe to be lost. So
about 4 million, right?
Yeah, something like that, 2 to 4 million. So yeah, what I really like about it is you can see people's behaviors during the pumps and the dumps. So during like the 2017, 2018 run up to 20K, you see some of those upper bands starting to contract, right? The light green band, which is the people who've been holding Bitcoin for 3 to 5 years. The lighter green is 2 to 3 years. The darker green is 3 to 5 years. You start to see those getting smaller and smaller. And that's when those longer term hodlers likely started selling their Bitcoin. When Bitcoin hit 20K, they're like, wow, this is crazy. I've been holding since $80. I'm going to, sell it for some other currency and to improve my life.
Buy a house.
Was that you buy a house,
buy a car, whatever.
Yeah, get a car, buy some chairs finally. What's really cool about right now, so all the way to the right side of the chart, is our run up to 69K. What we didn't see was the older age bands contracting as much. So if you look at the light green band and you look at the dark green band, they didn't really contract. They kind of stayed stable. And then now, over the last month or so, they're actually starting to grow, which means, in my opinion, that the people who bought when Bitcoin was $700 were pretty unimpressed by this run to 69K. They're like, I'm not selling my Bitcoin at 69K. This thing's going to a million or whatever. And so they didn't sell. So all of the pump to 69K and the dump now down to 20K looks to me like it's come out of the newer Bitcoin. So the lower half of the chart, the yellow, the orange, the red. And those are all the degens at Coinbase, gambling on Bored Apes and selling their Bitcoin for Luna and then losing their shirts. So the long-term hodlers here have been, I would say, bored by this last run up and just.
No, I agree.
I've been bored by it. 69K.
Nah. Dude, we were promised like 100K, 200K, 300K.
I was promised a foundational reset of the entire global economy. That's why I'm here. The price in dollars is just kind of fun. It's something that I like to pay attention to just because I work in Bitcoin full time and definitely impacts our business. But for me, I'm here for the long haul, and my UTXOs are starting to get older and older and older, and they will continue to get older.
Do you know what else this looks like? Remember painting by numbers?
Yeah.
It looks like right. You're gonna paint like a rocky outback, and then you're gonna catch the forest in the background and the sky.
Yeah, it's the Bob Ross of Bitcoin, just happy little bands.
Yeah, I love
happy
that.
Little UTXO bands.
So what happens if, say I had like some Bitcoin in cold storage and I signed up to Unchained and set up a multi-sig?
Yeah.
Those coins move. But they're not sold.
You have to have coins. So what you do when you sign up for multi-sig is my team, the Concierge team at Unchained, will send you hardware wallets. We'll walk you through setting up the hardware wallets, building the most secure type of Bitcoin address, which is the multi-sig address. And then once you have that, it's your choice. You can either buy Bitcoin from us into your address, or if you've purchased Bitcoin somewhere else, you can then move it to your address.
I didn't ask for a sales pitch, did I? This is a sales pitch. Come on, man.
You laid this one up for
Dude,
me.
no. I was saying, with this, I was saying if I move my coins,
Yeah.
then are they considered moved here?
Yeah. So if you
Yeah.
if you have coins at Coinbase, this is what I was trying to get to, is
Yeah.
like if you have coins at Coinbase and you're like, I need to improve my security, you would have to move your coins into a new address, which would reset the age of them. Right.
Yeah, so this isn't entirely accurate because it could be people just moving coins.
Well, it is entirely accurate for the movement of all the coins. Now, the rationale behind the movement, we don't know for certain exactly. So there's a lot of speculation, but I just think it's cool to see how, and you can start to see the waves of adoption over time. And what's interesting about right now is there's never been a time in Bitcoin's history where the Bitcoin has been sitting for a majority of the Bitcoin has been sitting for this long. So we're
really?
Yeah. So if you look at the yellow band, that's the 1 year age band. It's very thick and it's starting to take up a majority. Like everything above that has been sitting for many years.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's the 1 year band. And you can just see it kind of getting lower and lower on the overall chart. And that's because now about 70% of all Bitcoin has just been sitting for, I think, either longer than 6 months or longer than a year.
Huh.
It's very fascinating. So all of the churn and the price speculation is happening with, in my opinion, exchange coins for the most part. It's like a smaller and smaller number of exchange coins are what's causing all of these price fluctuations.
So how much do you think we were affected by what happened with Terra Luna, Three Arrows, Celsius? Do you think that destroyed a bull market that was going to continue?
I don't think so. I think those.
Do you think we were done?
I think those primarily were destroyed by the Federal Reserve raising rates.
Oh, okay.
Like I think at this point, all of crypto is low rate, 0% rate malinvestment. And as soon as people start charging to loan you money, that's when all these crazy malinvestments stop making sense. Okay. So anything, I mean, yes, the Luna stuff, the 3AC, broader crypto is really reliant on people having way too much cash on hand so that they can make crazy speculative investments. And that's one of the primary differences between crypto and Bitcoin is another currency that you can save in for the long term, which is what we're seeing here. A lot of people are saving in it for the long term, whereas 3AC, Terra Luna, those are all, short-term speculative, in a lot of ways, Ponzi scheme. Celsius. What was interesting about, the Luna stuff is kind of interesting as well because it's like this was marketed as a stable coin, right? So there's a lot of people out there who are like, or maybe not Luna, whatever, the Terra, US, whatever. There's a lot of stable coins out there and people are kind of interested in them because they're like, oh, it's helping introduce crypto to the broader world. It's helping to give, people without access to the dollar. And in theory, that might be true. But in practice, what we see is these stable coins are anything but stable, right? They're centralized entities that have lots of additional risks. So
you mean the algorithmic ones?
Both.
But even Tether?
I mean, they just keep hopping around to different jurisdictions trying to find a place that they can, issue their Tether. At some point, I think they're going to get clamped down on. There's like a systemic risk to Tether because it's centralized. So at some point, I think they're going to be shut down. And then there's, your stablecoin is nothing. It's not stable.
Yeah, that's a shame because Alex Gladstein spends a lot of time explaining how useful these digital dollars on a blockchain are.
And I get it. They are useful, but they are also very risky. Yeah. And I actually think, so a lot of people look at Bitcoin. They're like, it's very volatile. It's very risky. Bitcoin, in my opinion, is extremely low risk. You know pretty much exactly what you're getting. You're getting X percentage of 21 million. You can hold the keys to your Bitcoin and you can run a node and verify and nobody can inflate the supply. So I don't think it's very risky. Once you kind of understand what it is, how to use it, extremely low risk. Very high volatility, but I don't think volatility is necessarily risk. On the other side,
Well, that depends on your lifestyle, who you are, where you live. If you are living in a poor country and you have very limited money, that is a significant risk to your ability to feed your family.
it's not a risk though. It's like the volatility is maybe not palatable to you. Like you shouldn't go out and slam all your life savings into this really volatile asset if you can't handle the volatility.
No, of course.
But if you understand that there's volatility, then it's...
No, but it presents you a risk with being able to afford. Like the volatility presents a risk to your ability to afford what you need for your family. It's not that the asset itself is a risk, but the volatility introduces risk into your life.
I think that that's assuming that they need to have it right now.
Well, not most. I wouldn't know the numbers, but I would expect a large number of people, perhaps billions, live hand to mouth.
Yeah.
And they're the people we most want to get out of the situation they're in, because they're either living in jurisdictions with high inflation, authoritarian regimes, restrictions on what they can do and how they can trade. So they're probably some of the people who need it most.
Definitely.
But their ability to start using it and accepting it and having it in their life, there is a risk. If you're living hand to mouth.
And if you're living in like Turkey, you got 80% inflation and your options are like Bitcoin, whatever the currency in Turkey is, the lira, is it?
Yeah.
Or the like a US dollar stablecoin. Like the choice is pretty obvious.
Yeah, I mean, in those...
What is it? Depends. What's the obvious choice to you?
If you're living hand to mouth.
So...
It's the dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would make the most sense for somebody who is experiencing like hyperinflation right now. But again, like that's a cohort of people who have been completely screwed by central banking. Like the absolute destruction of civilization and their society is because of central banking destroying the value of their life savings. So like, while Bitcoin can help these people over the long term, the damage has already kind of been done to them. And so they need an immediate solution, right? They need something. They can't find a solution that's going to help them over 10 years. They need to find food today and tomorrow for their family. And so you have to look at something else. But interestingly enough, like the US dollar right now is experiencing seriously high inflation, right? So even the dollar is becoming a riskier and riskier thing to hold because it's 8% inflation. That's the official term, right? In reality, it's double digits.
It depends where you are. I mean, the dollar has dropped from 138 to the pound, so it's 112, I think, today, and it got as low as 105 to the pound.
I saw that.
So it's a better asset. It was a better asset to hold than the pound, the king's pound.
I guess as well, it depends how quickly you're turning around your money. If you turn around your money really quickly, Bitcoin volatility doesn't really matter.
Well, so when I was with Crypto Bastardo in Venezuela, he holds Bitcoin, and all he does is every week transfers the amount he needs in Bolivar out. And he would explain to me, like, he says, even when the price of Bitcoin is dropping, I'm going up in terms of the Bolivar because inflation is so high. So there are scenarios to work through it.
Sure. But I think from a high level perspective, like the whole global economy, think of it as the Titanic, right? It's starting to break apart, and there's parts that have already broken off and are sinking. And then there's a few people kind of left, and there's this life raft called Bitcoin, and you're in like a stormy, choppy sea, and Bitcoin's very volatile and it's bouncing all over the place. For the people who are still on the ship, like that might be a good option, or you should start exploring the life raft. For the people who are already sinking, like, I don't know, you have to figure out your hand to mouth at that point. Like you're scrambling. It's a different situation. So that's, while I really want Bitcoin and I think Bitcoin will deliver property rights and value to all 8 billion people in the world, but it's not going to solve all of their problems today.
No, of course
and what
not.
we can do is the people who still have resources, who are still able to save in it, should start saving in it, because that's when you can actually protect your purchasing power and avoid sinking.
Did you see the Bangladesh news today?
No.
Search for Bangladesh blackouts. This is fucking crazy. I think this is just another signal, because when you said the Titanic is starting to break apart, you wait till you see this. Most of Bangladesh left without power after national grid failure. So
That's insane.
large swathes of Bangladesh were left without electricity on Tuesday after partial grid failure, government officials said, adding the authorities are working to gradually restore power to the country of 168 million people. 75 to 80% of Bangladesh experienced blackouts. I think it was because the problem they were exporting natural gas and the increase in the price of natural gas.
Wow.
I mean, Bangladesh is a poor country, couldn't afford it. That's like a whole country going offline of a population over double the UK. What's the population of the UK? 72 million?
Yeah, it's like high 60s.
That's more than double the population of the UK. It's going fucking offline.
Yeah, it says here
Insane.
96 million people lost power. That's more than the UK.
That's insane.
I think Bitcoin has really taught me two very important lessons. One, don't fuck with the money. Two, don't fuck with the energy.
Yes.
It's crazy to me that in 2022, we have entire countries of 100 plus million people in the darkness when electricity was invented or discovered, over 100 years ago. I think in the 1800s, 1700s, maybe 1800s.
Maybe.
And we've been innovating since then. But over the last maybe few decades, I feel like we've gotten significantly worse at energy production and power delivery and so on.
Well, why would Ben say that is? Where would he go and point on a chart?
I can guess.
Which year?
1971.
Yeah. He would go and point to 1971. But like quite interestingly, it was Elon Musk who came out and said, we went to the moon in 1968. We've not been back. And I don't know the year. What year did you go to the moon? We didn't go. You didn't invite us.
Yeah, you guys weren't invited.
No.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we didn't go.
I've seen what you guys do at stag do's.
We probably sent a probe up to the moon at some point with our German friends or something.
The last mission was 1972.
Yeah, 1972. But also people rightly pointed out, when was Concorde? When did Concorde launch?
80s?
I don't know.
I know, introduced 76.
1976. So Concorde was introduced 2 years before I was born, and I'm an old fucker. And we haven't had they decommissioned them after the French, the Air France one crashed in. Was it in the UK? It was in Paris. It was going to the UK. That was it. Weird plane to get from. It'd take about 3 minutes. But yeah, so they decommissioned them, and we haven't had a supersonic eject since.
It's crazy. We're going backwards in a lot of ways.
We are.
And at the same time, we're seeing inequality around the world increase, and we're seeing power centralize.
Yep.
And I think that's the fiat system.
So don't fuck with the money. Don't fuck with the energy. Don't fuck with the food as well.
Yeah, that's energy.
Human energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I've never known a time like this in the UK. It's weird and a little bit scary. Just seeing what people are facing in terms of their energy costs, how we can suddenly go from a point where people's energy bills are £1,000 a year to £5,000 a year, which would be for some people 50% of their income.
Yeah.
To just be able to do that in a matter of a month is super scary. That's nothing like that has ever happened in my life. I can't remember anything like that.
It's a travesty. It's basic things to power your society, right? Literally to power it. It's like you need to have the lights on to have functional hospitals. You need to have the lights on to stay warm in the winter. Just basic necessities and issues that we've solved 100 plus years ago are rearing their ugly head again as the currencies start breaking down.
Well, there's a second layer to that as well, because there's the lack of innovation, say, with nuclear. I think most people are generally agreed that the decommissioning of nuclear plants, the lack of investment in nuclear plants was naive. The Green Lobby was allowed to essentially petition for these, this kind of anti-nuclear agenda following Fukushima and various other things. So I think that's one thing. But another thing in the UK is that we sold off all our energy to the free market to be developed. And whether or not you believe in the nation state, it is useful for a nation state to have energy security. I mean, the US kind of has it because you produce a lot of oil. We don't produce a lot of oil. We produce some. We don't really have energy security. We're buying all our energy from across Europe at the moment.
Yeah, what do you mean when you say that the UK sold off their energy to the free market?
So we import a lot of our energy.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. We have 3 nuclear plants? Is it one in Hinkley?
There's one in Sellafield as well.
Yeah. We have 3 nuclear plants. We don't, we used to produce most of our energy. I think it was coal-based.
Yeah.
But as we closed down rightly so, because coal is disgusting, and it could have been replaced with nuclear.
Is coal more disgusting than freezing?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there was no need to have to make that trade-off. if you're gonna close down your coal plants and replace them with nuclear, that makes sense. It's cleaner.
But who was closing down the coal plants and like who was selling off the grid?
I mean,
was it these private companies or was it enforced by the government? No, it was the government.
Because the government closed down all the mines, didn't they? It wasn't under like.
I mean, I don't know much about this.
Yeah, it's the. I mean, it's the same thing as like the Dutch farmers right now, right?
Yeah.
It's like the Dutch government is saying, "Well, we got to cut nitrogen to meet these X, Y, and Z climate goals," and it's not the farmers that are saying, "Hey, we need to really cut nitrogen." They're saying, "Hey, we can't produce enough food now, and so we're going to go on strike." So it's the same thing. It sounds similar to me. In the UK, you guys had energy security, and then some bureaucrat decided, in order to meet or achieve some goals, which in hindsight probably were not achieved, we're going to shut down the production of energy in X, Y, or Z fashion because it's not fashionable today.
And Marty Ben would say those fucking central planners, and he's right.
And now someone's being paid to pause the closure.
What's this? Closure of coal power stations set to be delayed. Oh, so we still got coal power to prevent UK blackouts.
They're probably spinning up coal at this point.
They probably are. Yeah, they probably are.
What I've also kind of realized, or the way I think about energy is, while we might not personally like one form of energy production over the other, the pricing mechanism typically does a really good job of demonstrating or elevating the type of energy that is the most efficient. So what Bitcoin has taught me, and Bitcoin mining in particular, is that Bitcoin mining is actually a component of the energy production industry to help make energy production as efficient as possible. And that is the most environmentally friendly. If we're producing energy efficiently, then we are not wasting anything, right? It's not inefficient. And the pricing system typically does a good job of demonstrating which is the most efficient, which is the cheapest. So but
not the most environmentally friendly.
I do think it is the most environmentally friendly, because if it's really expensive to produce this energy, then you have a lot of external inputs going into it. You have teams of scientists, you have all kinds of manufacturing and different production facilities. You have many orders of effects beyond just the actual burning of the coal whatever.
You mean the whole supply chain to allow
Absolutely.
the production? But there's different types of ways you can measure environmental friendliness. So, for example, if you are one of those people that believes, which I can't believe I'm even saying it like this, but increasing carbon in the atmosphere is will warm the planet and leads to a changing climate, which I do believe. It may be preferable to have something that leads to more e-waste rather than increasing carbon in the atmosphere. Both are environmental issues. E-waste is an environmental issue. Carbon is an environmental issue. But you might have a preference over one because e-waste, okay, it might be preferable to bury e-waste or look into recycling over increasing carbon in the atmosphere, which has potentially catastrophic effects.
But you're assuming that the production of the e-waste doesn't increase the carbon in the atmosphere.
Oh yeah, so if you want to go like full, you have to like map out the entire supply chain.
Yeah,
and that's a lot of work.
That's why we have to think from first principles, and we have to think about what's a signal that we can use to actually tell us what is the most efficient form of energy production. And it's typically what is the cheapest, what is the most affordable.
I would want to know if someone's actually done the work that correlates the price of energy production with the total or the percentage of increase of carbon in the atmosphere.
Well, I think that there's a lot of people who have done a lot of work on that, and they have come to decide that, and I'm not trying to pick on any one form of energy, but say like coal and gas and oil are bad, and solar, wind, nuclear, et cetera, are good. But the problem is, since central planners have pushed us towards one direction, now we have people who are spending a majority of their income trying to heat their home. So there's unintended outcomes to any sort of like centralized planning that pushes you in one direction or another, when the market is trying to tell you, hey, actually right now, natural gas is the most efficient way to power our homes, or oil, or hydropower. I'm not trying to pick one or the other, but just saying that the pricing mechanism, when there's no subsidies involved, does a really good job of telling people this is the most efficient type of energy that we can be using today.
Sure, I'm still not buying the price dictates. There's a correlation with carbon on the price on the entire.
Well,
I would just need to say I need a receipt.
We can look at and this is maybe the Austrian economic style of thinking, and I consider myself a student of Austrian economics. But if you think about this scenario of a Bitcoin miner, right? You have an ASIC chip. You want to be profitable. You want to earn Bitcoin. You need to go find the cheapest form of energy, right? So the cheapest form of energy is where you plug in your miner and you're profitable, even if you have a chip that's, an S9, which is like 5 years old at this point. And so I do think that Bitcoin is a really good, it's a good teacher. It tells us, okay, this right now is the most efficient way that we can be capturing energy. So it's like, before China banned Bitcoin mining, the miners were migrating with the rainy seasons because China had these massive hydroelectric dams that during the rainy seasons were way overproducing electricity. They were just wasting energy that they had captured. And Bitcoin helps us to actually capture that energy, monetize it so that these companies can invest in more efficient energy production. I just think that the pricing mechanism does the best job of demonstrating what's the most efficient.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I fundamentally agree with that. I just don't think it correlates to carbon in the atmosphere. I just think it's the cheapest to produce.
I think it correlates to carbon in the atmosphere because, again, the people who are working on the other types of energy, nuclear, like it might take 50,000 people working 10 years to build one nuclear plant. How much carbon have all those people been off-putting for 10 years before we can now turn on our nuclear plant and start seeing zero carbon emissions? Like, it's nothing exists in a bubble.
No, of course, but like somebody has to do the work. There has to be receipts for this. Otherwise, it's speculation. Like if there are no receipts for this, or somebody's done the work.
The pricing mechanism is the receipt, dude.
Yeah, but the price. Do you understand what I'm saying here, Danny?
I do understand, but I think you're talking at cross purposes on some of this. Because I think like Phil's point is, if you charge a Tesla from like an electricity that's generated by a coal power plant, like what are you really doing?
Right.
No.
You've harvested a bunch of heavy metals. You've like Tesla employs 100,000 people, and they've been engineering these cars for a decade, and then you plug it in, like.
Yeah, but no. I understand what you're saying is that when people are looking at the energy mix and looking at green energy, they aren't considering the entire supply chain. Okay,
or the outcome, even I would say, like the outcome is what we're stuck with right now, where we have a global energy crisis. Bangladesh was left without power for 168 million people. And I imagine, I'm not familiar with Bangladeshi energy policies, but I imagine that they're playing the same game as many of the other countries are, which is trying to go one direction or another. Right?
Yeah, but the thing I'm not buying is the lowest price, most efficient energy production is the one that produces the least carbon. Like, where is the correlation?
I think it gets even more confused when you add in like government grants and subsidies.
Absolutely.
Of course, but again, we're confused. The question I'm asking is, how does the efficiency of production dictate the level of carbon that's produced? I don't see the correlation.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a way. So I don't think any carbon measures are accurate today. First of all, like, because how do you actually? So I was thinking about this the other day. There was
which carbon measures?
Any of them. Like
in the atmosphere?
When a company says I'm carbon neutral, like what does your company do? How many people does your company employ? Like if you're manufacturing plastic toys, right? Like our company was built to manufacture plastic toys. Can anything you ever do be carbon neutral? So it's like all these, you can buy carbon offsets, but your whole company was established to manufacture plastic widgets, which produce carbon, which you try to sell to people. Like I think this whole scheme of trying to measure carbon output is, it's a racket. It's in a lot of ways like a shitcoin, like carbon energy credits. Like you can't accurately measure that, and it's totally dependent on what your industry is, and then that's also subjective. Like maybe I don't think that this plastic toy company should exist, but they're selling a ton of plastic toys to kids who are very happy and it's improving their lives. And so who am I to say this plastic toy company is, producing a bunch of excess carbon that we don't need? Like it's all subjective.
No, I think you're right. The measurement
Yeah.
is very difficult, and setting what should and shouldn't be done is totally subjective. I agree with you there. I mean, we have the same experiences of Bitcoin now, where people talk about the energy use of Bitcoin, and then rightly so, Bitcoin comes and say Christmas trees.
Well, I think the biggest irony to me there is I truly believe that there is nothing better for the environment than humans adopting a form of money that encourages them to save instead of overconsume.
Agree.
Like,
brilliant. Yeah, I love it.
Overconsumption is the cause of lots of additional waste and malinvestment. And again, that's my opinion. But what I've noticed with myself is when I started saving in a form of money that can't be debased and actually increases in value over time, I'm a lot less likely to go out and buy a second jet ski. I'm happy with my one jet ski. I don't need another jet ski.
You do. What are we gonna ride?
Oh shit!
You should have had 3 jet skis.
I'll get you guys one of those like tricycle powered.
Have you got a jet ski?
Not yet. I'll probably go pick one up after this though, because that sounds fun. You guys want to go later?
Should we go
what are you
jet
guys doing
skiing?
after this?
I'm in.
We're good jet skiing. Yeah, I mean, I didn't bring you in to talk about this today, but it's quite interesting. We had Nate Harmon on the other day.
Yeah.
Great guy. One of his jobs is to go up to one of the mountains in Hawaii and take the measurements. And unambiguously, carbon is increasing in the atmosphere at a massive rate. And
he's measuring this at the top of a volcano.
No.
But there's a really good reason too. It's like he was saying it's the highest mountain in the world. Like if you measure from the seafloor or whatever.
Yeah.
And he goes to the top of the mountain, so he's out of any kind of like contaminated wind from LA or whatever it might be. So there was like a point to it.
And his peers around the world are doing the same.
Sure.
And it's unambiguous that the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is increasing. I almost find to the point that anyone who wants to argue against that must be being paid by somebody, because the scientific readings are there. And he's also unambiguous in his point that if you increase carbon in the atmosphere, you increase warming. And he talks through the entire science of why the planet warms, why it retains heat. And if you retain heat, then there are consequences of that for people on the planet. For me, like, this is unambiguous.
Sure.
But what we do about it, or whether we do anything about it, I think is a fair area for discussion and debate. I agree with Alex Epstein, the rapid reduction in fossil fuels has severe consequences. But I do think also not having some kind of transition to less carbon intensive energy sources will also have other consequences that are very hard to predict, but could be quite severe depending on your socio-economic situation. And I think we've got ourselves in a position where people argue one end and not the other end, and we kind of need to meet in the middle and like find the answers to these issues. But there will be consequences if we continue increasing the burning of fossil fuels for decades ahead.
I subscribe to the Bitcoin astronomy perspective of energy production, which is that I want humans to be able to harness the power of our star, the sun, and so that we can go interplanetary and settle the solar system. And in order for us to get there, we're going to have to harness and generate and capture orders and orders and orders of magnitude more energy than we're already producing and capturing today. So I think getting there, we will have so much innovation. Like once we start harnessing additional energy at levels beyond what we can even comprehend today, the amount of innovation that we're going to be able to produce will be, it's unknowable, but also massive. And I do think that this effort of harnessing more energy will actually help us to solve these problems that we're having with carbon in the atmosphere, if you believe that that's something that we can solve.
You're talking about type 2 civilizations.
Oh yeah, Kardashev type 2.
By the Kardashian scale.
The Kardashian scale.
Yeah, we call it the Kardashian scale. We were doing it the other day. Do you know how high that scale goes up to?
I think it's 3, right?
No.
Oh, really?
Oh, we're going to blow your mind in a minute.
Oh, God.
Well, I think it does go up to 3, but some fucking kook on the internet has made it go up to like 20 or something.
No. It got up to 35, and then it went to eye, and then brain. We've got to show you this. This shit's wild. No, I think the Kardashian scale goes up to a 6 now.
Does it?
Yeah.
But
Goes up to Chloe.
I think, but I think like Nate would 100% agree with that. Like, and his point is that the ocean, it harnesses like, I think he said 40% of they can harness 40% of the world's total energy from the ocean. And the other thing that is like kind of to your point is, I don't know if he said it on the show or when we were hanging out after, but he was like, I don't give, like, in some ways he doesn't give a fuck about arguing with these people. He just wants to beat them at market because he can offer cheaper energy.
Yes. And that's like, by harnessing and producing significantly more energy, we're driving down energy costs. We're becoming more efficient at energy. And like, if he can produce, an order of magnitude more energy by harnessing the ocean, and it doesn't directly offset carbon, although the research and development in order to get to the point where you can harness the ocean's energy is going to produce carbon, then that's great, because humanity wins. We have more energy. It's cheaper. We don't have to spend half of our life savings on warming our home in the winter, and we don't have 168 million people in Bangladesh without the lights on, right? Like, this is a positive outcome. So like, harnessing more energy should be, or in my opinion, is a very noble goal for people to be doing.
Yeah, no. And one of the things that was never really clear to me until one of those things you're not clear until you see it, right? I never really thought about the impact of energy prices on the economy, because we've always had stable energy prices. I've never had to think about the impact of having a volatile currency until I went to a country and saw it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, our British pound shitcoin has decimated over like the 300 years as it existed, but it's relatively stable year to year. 2% inflation, you barely notice it, right? Even 8% inflation is annoying, but like survivable. It's only when you go to someone like Venezuela and you literally see what the impact is for hyperinflation, you realize it's a different world. Slightly increase in energy prices, you don't really think about it. When you suddenly see a massive increase in the energy prices as people can't get to work, or the example I gave the other day was this bakery. A centralized bakery that bakes goods for a number of cafes, but they also had 3 of their own cafes. The energy prices went so high that they couldn't afford to keep the cafes open. So they only have the centralized place now. So they just instantly had to close down 3 businesses. Now, other companies have a choice. They swallow the cost, which they can only do for a certain period, or they increase their prices. Prices go up, more inflation. So the impact of energy on the economy, on the productivity of the economy, on GDP, was never something I thought about until now. And now I realize, yes, absolutely, we need to produce as much cheap energy in the world as possible to make people as productive as possible to lift themselves out of poverty. That's right. Alex Epstein actually says that, and he's fucking right.
Well, when you lift yourself out of poverty, then you have the ability to spend more time on solving bigger issues, right? If 8 billion people around the world are struggling to feed their families tomorrow, like, we can't actually solve the larger issues of the world, right? Like, if you think that we can actually solve this carbon issue without either making it worse or destroying the planet, then we have to be able to like heat our homes and have our basic needs taken care of, so that it's like a higher order problem to solve.
I think the blip in this time is the nuclear problem. I think if we'd continue to develop nuclear and continue to expand nuclear, I don't think all of this would ever have been an issue. But I think it is. I mean, we found out the other day, 54 nuclear plants in France?
Yeah.
32 in a state of disrepair? I had no idea.
I don't know if they're in a state of disrepair. They're just down for maintenance. But I mean, it's a lot. And all at once, it seems.
If a nuclear plant is down for maintenance, that's in a state of disrepair. And if there's 32 of the 54, that suggests that something's been neglected, if you ask me. But to me, that is the blip in all of this. We should be largely beyond fossil fuels for, I think, providing energy to the grid. Yes, we've needed it for cars and planes, and we probably will never replace it for planes. But the US just launched an aircraft carrier that's a nuclear aircraft carrier. So we've harnessed the power of nuclear in vehicles as well as
but I mean,
generation.
So that's like the perfect example of where we've invested decades and decades and decades into producing a warship powered by nuclear energy.
Yeah.
Like the carbon output of that like war machine is astronomical. And like now that we have this gigantic ship that's running on nuclear, like, is that good for the environment? Like, no.
Why not?
Because it's a machine of war. It's
forget. I mean, the machine of war.
specifically-
Like, I'm talking about just the carbon output of an aircraft carrier that is powered by.
I want fewer aircraft carriers.
No, of course, no, of course. But all I'm talking about is the fact that they've harnessed the energy of nuclear power to power that. Like, which, by the way, always weirds me out as well, because you're made to fear nuclear, but you can actually power an aircraft carrier or a submarine with nuclear power. But the point is like we've harnessed these technologies, and now we've just kind of like let them go, and we're in this situation now, which is
Currency collapse is a real bitch.
energy collapse is a real bitch.
Currency is what coordinates the extraction of energy, and right now the energy we're not extracting it and harnessing it very well.
And we're blowing up pipelines which distribute energy across Europe. But an energy crisis and a currency crisis at the same time is quite the fucking mix.
Well, Bitcoin, it's money and it's energy at the same time. It's the marriage of the two, energy, money, right?
Yeah.
And so I think maybe regardless of how your currency is secured, your currency is always a form of energy. It's always like the output of delivering value of human energy in action. You should save that value that you've produced in a form of money. And regardless of how that money is saved or secured, like energy has always been expended to achieve it.
Yeah. I don't want to let you off completely on this fossil fuels thing. Yeah, I do just want to finish off because it is an evolving understanding that people are having. That certain people have brought new information to the table. But I think the unknown area is that if we continue to burn fossil fuels, as we are, and we continue to increase carbon in the atmosphere, what are the consequences before we transition away from that? We are seeing the consequences of an increase in carbon in the atmosphere. The planet is warming up quicker than it would, and I know some people say it's always been warming. No, it's not warmed at the rate it's warming now, and there are consequences for that. We don't fully know the impact of that. Now, those who have catastrophized it have obviously they've not done a great PR job for what the cause they're trying to support. But there are significant risks of a massive increase in warming. There are significant risks of increase in sea levels. I mean, we do have an increase in sea levels, and there is a significant increase to people living in coastal regions. But we don't know when these consequences hit. It might not be us. It might be my grandchildren that suddenly hit with a different scenario.
Sure,
we don't know these, and I think it's only right for the smart, right, intelligent people who aren't being lobbied just do the right research on what will be the impact on the environment if we do continue to increase carbon in the atmosphere. Because that's the bit we've always struggled to find good data on. There's good models on the changes in temperature if we continue to increase carbon, but nobody's done any particular good work on the impact of that. That's the bit I've struggled to find.
The way I think about it is...
Fuck them.
No. I think that it very well could be a crisis or a real problem. We don't know how it will manifest. We don't know when it will manifest. I've heard lots of predictions over the years that have proven to be false. What we do know for certain is what happens when you try to push a civilization to a form of energy that isn't as reliable quickly. Mm-hmm. We have evidence and certainty about how societies collapse and the suffering that it causes.
Yes.
We think that there will be a problem in the future, right? We have certainty. If you move off of fossil fuels today and you try to go full wind, solar, whatever, like you're going to be in the darkness, like Bangladesh. We believe that there might be a problem in the future. It's like an unwinnable situation. I think what we can do is try to remove all the subsidies, get a real market price. Well, first of all, hold on.
Even for oil.
Hold on. First of all, step back. Foundationally reset the entire global economy on a sound money.
Okay.
Step one. Then when we have real prices again, because we don't have real prices right now, our prices of everything are heavily, heavily manipulated by what Jerome Powell is feeling on a given day. Once we have real prices, you'll be able to see what is the most efficient way to produce energy. We will produce energy that way. And the people who are the most profitable at producing energy will have additional resources to invest in getting more efficient at producing energy, right? Bitcoin mining helps us get there because any excess energy that's generated, you can just mine, right? Just offload to the Bitcoin network. So yeah, that's kind of my strategy here is first of all, rip out the Frankenstein financial system with a bunch of different 100 whatever different currencies that are all collapsing, replace it with sound money.
Yes.
We have real pricing mechanism so we can see now with much greater clarity what's the most efficient way to produce energy. Invest in that.
You should go and get Jerome Powell's job.
Yeah, I should just call him up.
You have massive conviction on this, right? Okay, so do you think if we replace the world's global currencies on sound money,
yes,
and have proper, accurate pricing, do you believe, therefore, what is the role of the state in this, or is it see you later?
No, we have to have an entity that has a monopoly on violence. Like there must be.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
Bold statement. Like, okay. No. I'll tell you why this is interesting. Because
but you didn't let me finish. But go ahead.
Okay. No. Actually, you fin. It's just because this debate hasn't really come up, and I've wanted to hear this because certain people would argue that it's morally wrong for an entity to have the monopoly on violence. But I've also heard the argument that if somebody has a monopoly on violence, there is less violence.
So the way that I think about it is, so first of all, the way that governments work today is out of control.
Yes.
They're way too large and they're way too abstracted away from like your local community. So in my opinion, there's certainly, you need to have some form of protection. And I don't subscribe to the 100% homesteader, self-sovereign, mountain man out in the woods method because
statist
society is formed through humans cooperating, and the sum is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Like when people get together and collaborate and cooperate, we produce something that is way more impressive and better than any single individual can produce.
And we need hierarchy.
What you need to have in order to maintain the peace in a civilization is some entity that it's a justice system. You need to have laws. You need to have people who enforce those laws, and you need to have consequences for breaking the laws. So I do believe that civilizations have historically formed in this way because it's the best way to form a civilization. We've never built a society on top of a sound money, which I think will really change the dynamic. Like the communities will all be much more local. Politics will be much more local. And
we've had close to a society built on a sound money when we had the gold standard.
That's close, but gold is...
But we understand the difference in productivity and the accuracy we're pricing when we did have a gold standard.
I would say that we didn't have sound money. So gold is not a sound money. It's close. It was the best that was available, but it's not sound because it's physical and it has an unknown total supply. So if you think about money as a ruler, like money is a tool that allows you to store and communicate value. It allows you to measure the value of your output and purchase goods and services, which is the output of others, right? It's a tool. Mm-hmm. We've never had a tool that is an accurate measurement of output until Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has a supply of 21 million. It's fixed. It's set.
Oh, no, I agree with you. I'm just saying we had closer to it. We could, even though it wasn't a sound money system, it was closer to a sound money system. And again, Ben Prentice will point to 1971 and he will say, look at the difference. Look what happened when we came off the gold standard. Mm-hmm. So all we've done is get further away from
Well, the problem, yeah, and that's like coming off of the gold standard is an inevitability with gold because it's physical and because it has an unknown total supply. You can't verify how much gold you have.
Well, and
very
it's
easily.
centralized.
Well, it centralizes
Yeah.
because it doesn't scale for a global society. Like we can't travel to different solar systems on gold using gold as our money. Like we can't travel to different planets even because it's you can't lug around like piles of gold.
You keep dipping into Drew's.
I've just been thinking about space recently.
Yeah, I love Drew's articles.
It's great.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So how do we reestablish on? No, hold on. Where were we? You were in the middle of something.
You were asking Phil about like what the society he envisioned would be.
Yeah.
Like.
Oh,
so the monopoly and violence. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of Austrian thinkers have written about the role of government in a society. Mises wrote a lot about that, and I think it's correct. I think first of all, from the first principle of like, you know, the ultimate sovereign individual just cannot produce as much value as a collection of people working together.
Yes.
So civilizations grew because it's more efficient, it's better, it delivers more prosperity, and human nature is such that if you can cheat, you will cheat. Maybe not a given individual, but in a collection of individuals, somebody is going to take a shortcut somewhere. And so I do think that you need to have rule of law and you need to have a system of government. I just think like this federal system around the world, or these federal systems are hugely inefficient. They're bloated and they don't work very well anymore. And the only reason that they're sustained is because they have the power of the printing press. So that's my two sats on that. Like there will be government. It'll be much more local. The local governments will be, or the local civilizations will be much more prosperous.
I mean, I completely agree with you. But there are a lot of people in Bitcoin who wouldn't agree with you and don't agree with you. Giacomo Zucco would say millions of people interact with each other voluntarily every day, and we do not need any form of monopoly on violence.
I mean, I think that's also a perspective. Like if he feels that way, then that's kind of Giacomo's perspective. I just think like you have to pay someone for security, or you have to secure yourself. And I don't subscribe to the mountain man, in the woods, like with a huge arsenal and homesteading. Like it's just not the society I want to live in. I want to live in a nice community where I can trust my neighbors and like, maybe I can defend myself, but on the whole, like we have to hire somebody to defend us because I can't specialize in defense. I need to specialize in, helping people hold their keys. Like that's the division of labor. And I think that that's what civilization's built on. So yeah, I would happily pay somebody for protection.
So how fundamental to this is 21 million?
It's everything. Yeah. So it's the reason that we're here talking today. Bitcoin is the discovery of digital scarcity. It's the permanent solution to this idea of inflation or printing money. The unfortunate side effect of Bitcoin is that people who don't understand that the innovation was removing the printing press from the hands of everyone view it as, oh, now I can become a central banker, right? So the broader crypto scene is people who want to be their own central bankers. Bitcoin and Bitcoiners are the people who understand that we've got to separate money production from the hands of any given individual so that we can all use this neutral currency and it can accurately store value over time.
And it's a non-negotiable for you. We know because
21 million is non-negotiable. So I wrote a couple articles a few years ago about this, and the reason I wrote these articles was really a few reasons. Like, first of all, a lot of crypto marketers will compare their currency's inflation rate to Bitcoin's inflation rate, because every 10 minutes, 6.25 Bitcoin are released through the process of processing transactions, which we call mining. that categorization is totally wrong. Like Bitcoin does not have inflation. Bitcoin has a supply of 21 million that is released on a fixed schedule that we can all verify on our home computers.
So they already exist.
I believe that they already exist.
Yeah, I know.
And I think about
Parker
it.
told me about this last
Yeah,
night.
so I think about it as your mom bakes 21 cookies, and you get one cookie every 10 minutes for doing your math homework.
This is how I got like this.
Exactly. Like you don't have control of all the cookies yet, but do the cookies exist? Yes. If somebody comes in and says, actually, I have another 21 million cookies, like those are a different set of cookies.
So I need to ask a couple of technical questions on that.
Sure.
Then. So at the point where a block is found
Yes.
and the Coinbase reward is created, and is a UTXO created at that point? So like I don't understand this part.
Yeah.
Of the thing.
So when the Coinbase, when a block is discovered,
yeah.
The mining pool that discovers the block is issued the subsidy, and it's issued as a UTXO.
So the UTXO is created at that point.
The UTXO, yes, is created at that point.
So I don't think all 21 million exist then.
So they have to already exist because we know that the supply is 21 million, and then we also know if the schedule has been broken. So if a miner finds 12.5 Bitcoin at the next block, like we know that that's invalid. That's not Bitcoin. That's a hard fork.
Yeah.
Right. But how do we know that it's a hard fork if the Bitcoin doesn't already exist? We already know that there's 21 million. We know exactly how they're released. And if anything about that schedule changes, that's a hard fork that we can claim and sell for more Bitcoin.
So I'm going to argue back with you that I don't think they exist because I was thinking about this quite a bit last night.
Okay.
So I understand your point in that can only be 21 million, and then every 10 minutes, these are issued out to the pool or the lucky solo miner. But my argument is that you can only identify Bitcoin by UTXOs, and therefore those Bitcoins that haven't been issued yet, because that don't have a UTXO, so they don't exist. But the software only allows Bitcoin to be issued up until the point it hits 21 million.
But we know exactly where those Bitcoin are living in future blocks. Like you can pick any block in the future, and I can tell you how much Bitcoin lives in the Coinbase reward there. And what we don't know is the existing UTXO set, how that's going to move. Like the hodl waves is how we kind of see the existing UTXO set and how it moves over time. We have very little clarity. Like Satoshi could, market sell his 1 million Bitcoin for Ethereum proof of stake, tomorrow. Seems a little unlikely to me, but they could, right? Because they have the keys to it. The UTXOs are under the controls of their keys. What Satoshi can't do is, I don't know what block we're at, but 5 blocks from now, change the 6.25 subsidy to something else.
But to me, that's the rules that says what Bitcoin can be created at that point. The rules say they don't exist yet, but they say they can be created at that point. When that block is created, the consensus rules pass, and those Bitcoin are created. Again, I don't know the technicals of how, what, or what part happens when they're created, but the UTXOs are issued at that point. Therefore, once the UTXOs are issued, then that Bitcoin exists.
So I think of it as again, like Bitcoin is the software that we run on our computers, and it's the private keys we hold to our Bitcoin addresses. Mm-hmm. And the software we run, the node, has the roadmap laid out. It has all 21 million Bitcoin and exactly when they're going to be released in which block. And so I think that if you understand how this system works, you can just assume that all 21 million Bitcoin exist, and you can profit from that information. Like miners out there are not investing in massive mining infrastructure, with the knowledge that this thing could change. Like they're doing it because
I agree.
It's fixed. They understand that there will only be 21 million Bitcoin, and so it's just better to think of them as already existing. The other thing, so again, the reason that I think that it's important to think like this, and it's very esoteric.
I know,
but when shitcoiners are marketing, oh, Ethereum is now ultrasound money because it issues less, per day than Bitcoin. Like, that's insane. You can't, first of all, you can't change something to become more sound. That's an oxymoron. Number two, like, you don't know the ultimate supply of Ethereum. You don't know the ultimate supply of gold. You don't know the ultimate supply of really any currency because none of their supplies are credible.
You don't even know the current supply.
Exactly. With Bitcoin, you know that there will only ever be 21 million, and you know exactly how they're going to be unlocked or issued. So I just think switching your mindset into understanding that they already exist helps you to understand sound money principles and helps you to understand why broader crypto is, in my opinion, a scam.
Yeah, no, I can understand the mind switch. I just don't agree they exist yet. What do you think, Danny? Do they exist?
I don't really see why it matters. Like, either way, not the 21 million, but like whether they already exist or they're getting unlocked over time, like it makes no real difference. I think the idea for like a marketing side of things is really good in the terms of like clarifying the difference, but it makes no difference, does it?
Yes, I mean, if that's the only reason, then that's a good reason, because you have these idiots out here marketing Ethereum as ultrasound money,
yes,
which is, there's nothing even remotely minimally sound about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at this one metric and saying the inflation rate is what makes it ultrasound money. And they're like, look at Bitcoin's inflation. It's, whatever percent per year, 1 point something percent per year. The way I look at it is, no, Bitcoin's inflation is zero because
and has always been zero.
The supply is fixed. It's the only currency that has ever existed that has a fixed supply. All other currencies don't have a fixed supply. Even the other cryptos that say that they have fixed supply, they're centralized, and so it can be changed. And there's plenty of examples of all of those other cryptos changing. And then the fact that, and the innovation of Bitcoin is the discovery of digital scarcity, and broader crypto is is just proof that things that are digital are extremely easy to copy. Like, you can copy Bitcoin's code base, change a few things here or there, launch your own currency. You've proven that things that are digital are typically not scarce. But what you can't do is create more than 21 million Bitcoin.
So I see your point now, that there's an inflation rate of zero.
Yeah,
there's just a release schedule.
It's a schedule.
It's a schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the second article I wrote.
That's actually a really good point, and I can see the benefit there. Then explain it to people, because another thing I was discussing with Parker yesterday was that my way of explaining Bitcoin to people is evolving. It's moving from telling them what Bitcoin is to telling them what is wrong with fiat money, and then what Bitcoin solves. Now, I think it's going to be far easier to say there's an inflation rate of zero and there's 21 million and there's a release schedule than to say there's this inflation rate and every 4 years there's a halving. And because you have to get into all the difficulty, you have to get into all this other shit you don't need to get into. That
right.
Just makes it easier. I get it.
So then
I think you're wrong, but Jeremy, do they already exist? Yes or no?
No.
Oh, wow.
But I'm agreeing with you. It's a useful thing to say, and I'm going to use that because sometimes it's better to do it that way.
All right. Well, I've changed maybe one mind, or at least I've tipped the needle a little bit.
You tipped the needle.
So the other reason that I wrote the first article and the second article is when you understand that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin because Bitcoin is in fact the supply of 21 million. Like, you can't separate the two. You then realize that the other marketing angle that a lot of crypto and shitcoin founders will take is this idea that at some point in the future, Bitcoin will be unsecure.
It's one of the most regular emails I get.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what happens in 3 halvings time if the Bitcoin price are at this point, and we have a much lower hash rate.
Yeah.
We're less secure. And what if that is a trend? Like, can you get somebody on to talk about this? And I'm like, we can't make a whole show on that. But it is a question that comes up a lot.
And it's a really tough question to tackle because I don't think that the answer is what people want to hear. So the way that I think about this is Bitcoin secure today?
Deal with it at the time.
Well, is it secure today?
Yes.
Was it secure 5 years ago?
I mean, I don't think you can say whether it is binary secure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is it still alive?
Yeah.
So then it was secure 5 years ago.
Yeah. No, I think what you can do is you can calculate the cost. You can do a couple of things. You can calculate the cost of how much hash power you have to.
I think that's the wrong approach personally.
But just bear with me. To be able to attack it, okay, you have to be able to do that. But then you also have to rationalize the actual process of being able to accumulate that hash power, which is even more likely. So, when somebody says, well, you need $20 billion of mining, yeah, fine. Oh, well, somebody's got 50 billion, they can do it. Yeah, but you can't actually go and accumulate the hash power. And if you do, other people will start accumulating hash power. So I think you can create a risk model, okay, of how much hash power there is, how much do you need, how easy is it to get it? Because look at BCH or BSV, you could very easily accumulate that hash power and you could destroy those networks, right? It's very easy to do. With Bitcoin, it's close to impossible right now. So that's the way I think of it, like how risky, like what is the risk model rather than the cost?
So I think about it as the network security is discovered on the free market. So it will only and the fact that it's alive today, 13 years after its founding, is proof that the incentives to secure it were set up correctly. So Bitcoin's hash rate was, a quarter of what it is today 5 years ago, but it's here today and the hash rate is now at an all-time high. What hasn't changed throughout that time is that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. The other thing to think about, and I think anyone who's doing any sort of modeling using the US dollar is on the wrong path. Because the value of the dollar is constantly changing, the value of Bitcoin is constantly changing. You have to take those as things that are going to continue to be true forever with Bitcoin. The value of the currency is always going to change, even when it's globally adopted by 8 billion people, because people are exchanging it constantly. So what I look at is there incentive today to invest in Bitcoin mining or invest in securing this thing? And the incentive is, is it profitable to actually do that? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Like large companies around the world are investing massive amounts of capital into mining Bitcoin because it's a profitable endeavor. And it will always be true because Bitcoin mining is actually part of the energy production industry. It's not like its own like carve out industry. It's like part of energy production is that you have to balance the amount of energy you're producing with the amount of demand for the energy. And you can never perfectly balance it. And so you're always going to have a scenario where, you produce too much energy and demand doesn't quite meet it. And you need to do something with that energy or waste it. So today, when we look at energy production, especially in the renewables, there's a lot of times when the supply and demand are out of whack. And so they have to shut down production. So like I was reading a statistic about wind energy that said that in California, I think in like 2018, 2019, 17% of the time they're shutting off production of energy. They're producing way too much wind energy than they can deliver to the grid. Well, what if you had a tool that would always buy your wind energy?
But it's only going to buy the wind energy, if it can mine Bitcoin.
Sure. Or
enough Bitcoin. And the unknown is come 2141, but probably much before then, what do they actually mine in that block? What do they get out of that block?
Sure. Well, and I like to point to another kind of historical Bitcoin moment, which is when Laszlo purchased 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. Do you guys know what the transaction fee he paid was?
I do, because I read your article.
Guess.
I don't know, 5 sats?
1 Bitcoin.
Ha!
Today, we pay, I think each block, and we'd have to pull up like blockstream.info to see exactly what the transaction fee is, but tens or potentially hundreds of millions of sats in transaction fees. At today's price, it's not that bad. Like in the future, as the value of Bitcoin changes, 10 million sats could be an astronomical fee to be paying.
If enough people are using the base chain.
But we know that the number of users of Bitcoin is continually increasing over time.
But they might do this. They might just be hodlers.
That's
Or
great.
using the Lightning Network.
That's number go up technology right there.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you could have a scenario where there just isn't the number of transactions to create.
I don't think that can ever be the case because, first of all, you have to make layer 1 transactions to use the Lightning Network. You have to settle your Lightning channels eventually. Like you have to manage channels. And so people will, even if you're using the Lightning Network, you're always going to be at some point making layer 1 transactions. And then on top of that, the difficulty adjustment of Bitcoin ensures that Bitcoin is always paying the market rate for energy. Like if it's not profitable for a majority of miners to mine Bitcoin at the current value and with the current transaction fee environment or subsidy environment, they'll shut off production. The difficulty adjustment kicks in, and then it becomes profitable for somebody to mine at that value. So the difficulty adjustment, I think, really takes care of a lot of this issue. Like it will always be profitable for somebody to be mining Bitcoin.
No, agreed. Yeah. But how many people are competing to mine that Bitcoin, and how much security is there at that time?
I think, and bringing everything kind of back to energy, like one of my visions for the future is that energy production is also extremely localized, right?
Yeah.
So, solar panels on your roof or whatever, or a local nuclear power plant or something, a little power plant that you can put in your backyard, something like that. And you're going to individually have that problem of supply and demand for energy. So it's like you're always going to need a tool to buy up any excess supply, and monetizing any amount of that is better than shutting off production.
So hash rate's basically just gone up forever.
Yeah, it's on an all-time high right now. I mean, it crashed 40% when China banned Bitcoin.
But that came back pretty quick.
Oh my gosh, yeah, almost immediately.
But do you think there's a time where like the sort of ratio between price and subsidy reached a point where it has to start dropping again?
I don't think so, because again, like, and the problem that Bitcoin mining solves is not a Bitcoin problem, it's an energy problem. Like we're always going to be imperfectly efficient at energy production. And this is a tool that energy producers can always use or rely on in a situation where they can't, deliver the energy to, people. Like it never competes with individuals for energy. Like in the UK, I'm sure all Bitcoin miners have essentially shut off production.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so expensive to buy energy there that it's,
even before this, we just don't really have mining. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's too expensive before that.
Exactly. So it's like mining always goes to the places that is the remote stranded energy, the cheapest energy, the excess hydro. Every single renewable energy setup should have ASICs on site because it's just a tool for them. So yeah, I don't think it'll ever be a problem. And I think the prediction articles that I've read have all made a lot of mistakes because they're trying to measure the value of the security in like the dollar, but the dollar is changing value and the Bitcoin is changing value. And so you have to think about it from Austrian first principles in order to kind of have a deeper understanding of it, I think.
Well, this wasn't the show we expected to make at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Last point on that, though, before we close out. That's like the argument that all the ETH people are going to now try and target, though, that like Bitcoin mining means you can't have a light on. Like now they've gone to proof of stake, that's going to be attacked like hard.
Yep.
Well, they already started, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, they started as soon as they knew. Their timing for that transition in terms of like trying to sort of spread FUD is perfect. But do you worry about that? Like, what do you think about what Ethereum?
I just, I'm maybe like naively optimistic about Bitcoin. I think that because we have Bitcoin, the transition to sound money isn't going to be as catastrophic as some people are thinking. It's not going to be pleasant for people. I think that the Ethereum marketing is going to get more aggressive, but just the fact that Ethereum itself is inflation and they keep changing things, and so it doesn't have a credible monetary policy. And on top of that, it is money. It doesn't really do all that much else besides be money. You can print your own money on top of their money. You can produce some tokens, some NFTs, which are again kind of like forms of money. So it's just money, but it's way crappier at being money than Bitcoin. And so no amount of marketing will ultimately overcome that. Is it going to get worse? Sure. I think what we're seeing is there's more and more people that are waking up to this idea that Bitcoin mining actually fortifies the grid. So we're already seeing articles, here in Texas about during the recent heat wave, the grid was able to tap into 1% additional energy by just asking the miners to shut off production. And what's cool about mining is, you just flip a switch and then the energy is diverted somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then if there's too much energy, you just flip the switch back on, you start buying the cheap energy again. So it's a really, again, super useful tool for energy production. I think the economic reality of the fact that Bitcoin is sound money will just overcome any sort of marketing that is levied against it, as it has for the last 13 years. I mean, I was just talking to some family members the other day, and they're like, man, I've been hearing some really bad stuff about Bitcoin. And it's like, yeah, that's always been the case. There's never been a moment. I've been in Bitcoin for many years, and it's always been dumped on by everybody, right? Mainstream media, governments, shitcoiners, like everybody is constantly dumping on Bitcoin. But the thing is anti-fragile. It absorbs all that and becomes stronger. And I think the clearest example of that is, or one of the clearest examples, is when China banned mining last year.
Yep.
You saw a 40% crash in hash rate, and then it immediately hit, all-time high again after the course of maybe like 3 months. And the position that Bitcoin is in after the fact is way stronger than before because all that hash rate has dispersed across the globe.
Yep.
So when you try to ban this thing, you increase the level of decentralization of it. It gets stronger every time you attack it.
Have you got that chart for Harry?
Yeah, I sent him that.
You did. You got it.
I'll pull it up.
It's brilliant. So this is every chart you need for Bitcoin. Whenever you have an argument with somebody discussing Bitcoin, just send them this.
Can't find it.
I tried to describe Bitcoin to some people by showing them the hodl waves to start. Didn't go that well. Exactly.
All right. Do you want to give a shout out to Unchained before we finish?
Sure. So, I'm Phil Geiger. I'm managing director of Concierge at Unchained. And what we do is we help people hold the private keys to their Bitcoin in a way that you're not going to lose your Bitcoin. So one of the biggest problems with self-custody is the thought of like, oh man, I make one mistake, I've lost my life savings. We use a type of address that has a bunch of redundancies so that if you lose a piece of information, you haven't lost your Bitcoin. This is all native to the protocol. It's multi-signature. And my team will help walk you through how to set this up from A to Z, and then we take care of people after the fact. What's cool about Unchained is from a position of extreme security, multi-signature addresses where you have the keys, you can then do a bunch of cool financial products. Like you can hold Bitcoin in a retirement account in an IRA where you actually hold the keys. You can buy Bitcoin from us directly into cold storage. There's no other counterparties that you're dealing with. You can take a loan using your Bitcoin as collateral. We're really trying to build a full suite financial services company on top of this foundation of clients holding their own keys, on top of multi-signature, which is, again, just native to Bitcoin. It's one of the tools that Bitcoin affords us.
Awesome, man. All right, Phil, good to see you. Please go and check out Unchained. We didn't plan to talk about any of this, so yeah, here's what it is, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.